All right, so we are live and the audience is trickling in. I'm going to wait for a minute or so for people to connect and join in. So those of you who are in the room, welcome. Thanks for being on time. I'm going to do a quick audio test. If you're able to hear me, then please quickly say a yes in the chat window. This would let me know that you're able to hear me loud and clear. Okay, I think the audio is still connecting, so I'm still going to wait for a minute before I do this test once more. We have around 25 people in the room so far, and more are coming with every passing second. So those of you who are in the room right now and are able to hear me through the chat window, just let me know that you're able to hear me loud and clear. So say a quick yes in the chat window, and that would be great. Okay, I think the chat function was deactivated so far. Now I see the yeses coming in. So thanks, Aman. Thanks, Aman, Darshika, Pranav. Thank you for that confirmation. It's great to see you all over here. We're still going to wait for a couple of seconds. I know you guys are super punctual and on time, and we really appreciate that. But we're still going to wait for a few seconds for other people to join in and then start this conversation. So in the meanwhile, while you're here, let us know the city you're dialing in from. So in the chat window, let us know which city, wherever in the world you are, let us know the city that you're dialing in from. Okay, I see Aman from Pune, I saw Saini from Mumbai, Darshika, Seva from Delhi, I see Akriti from Uttarakhand. Beautiful place, enjoy yourself, have a great time there. I see Aditya from Pune, Akhila from Hyderabad. Okay, more people from Pune, Delhi, Hyderabad, Jodhpur, Mumbai. Okay, I still want to see some more diversity, anyone from the northeast of the country, further north. Okay, I see someone from Bangalore now. So yeah, I see people from south, north, east, not so many from east so far, but from the west as well. So great to have you all over here. At this point, let me start this session and introduce the topic once more and introduce you to our presenter for today. So today's session is about the University of Law. We are talking to Gareth Bramley, who's a senior tutor at the University of Law, to tell us about how you, possibly as an Indian candidate, become a solicitor in the United Kingdom and practice law in England and Wales. He's going to talk about the two pathways which are possible. So the new SQE path, which has been recently introduced, and the old LPC route for students who might be eligible for that. So he's going to talk about both of those pathways and talk about the differences between these pathways, and also tell you about the courses that the University of Law offers and the support that it provides to students, so that if you decide to go ahead and pursue a pathway, a career in law, then possibly you can look at the University of Law for that. To tell you a little more about Gareth, so Gareth obtained his LLB degree and the LPC qualification from the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. He's a qualified solicitor, and while he was in practice, he specialized in both contentious and non-contentious commercial and construction matters at an international law firm. He teaches business law and practice, law and business, and introduction to professional practice on the LPC, as well as the law of organization on the GDL. Gareth is also Sheffield Year Head for the LPC program. So with that, let me hand over the session to Gareth to tell us more about the University of Law and the two pathways that we are talking about. Over to you, Gareth.
Thanks very much, Sanjay. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's very kind. And yeah, nice to see so many people attending online. Hopefully you can all hear me okay, and you can see the slides okay. Obviously, let me know if not, but I presume you can, because we've had a test of this before. So, oh, great. Thank you. That's great. So yes, I'm dialing in from sunny Sheffield today. It's just after 2:30 here in the UK in Sheffield. The sun is actually shining today in Sheffield, which it doesn't always happen, but it is today. And as Sanjay said, I did my degree and my legal practice course here, and I've lived here over half my life after moving up from the south of the UK, near Reading. So yeah, I have been in practice, and I've been teaching on the LPC now in total 11 years, 2 years at the University of Law. And as many of you might have seen, there's been a recent change in the UK to being admitted as a solicitor in England and Wales, as Sanjay was briefly saying there, which has changed the current regime, which currently, just to kind of briefly talk about, which I'll go over again in a minute, which you may know, the current traditional regime, which has been here for a long time now, certainly the new LPC, as I would describe it, has been in place for approximately 15 years in its current incarnation. but the format itself has been around for over 25 years now in the UK, is that in order to become a solicitor in England and Wales in the UK, the traditional route, as I'll refer to it today, is that you must have done a graduate degree in law or equivalent. So that would be a GDL or MA in law or equivalent. And then you had to take a legal practice course, which is either a year or 2 years in length. After that, you would complete a 2-year training contract at any law firm accredited by the Solicitor Regulation Authority in England and Wales. And after that point, you would be able to be admitted as a solicitor in England and Wales. So that, in a nutshell, is the traditional route up to now. That has changed, and that changed as at September 2021. Okay, so where we're at the moment is in this kind of transitional period where effectively both routes are on offer. I'll explain that a bit more in a moment. So just before we get there, obviously, I wanted to talk a little bit about the University of Law, which Sandra has mentioned. You'll see from this slide that the University of Law operates at a number of different locations. Sheffield's not actually on there, but if you're just below Leeds, kind of right in the middle, we're about as far away from the coast as you can get, although we do get the odd seagull here, which is strange. But yeah, we're about as far away from the coast as you can get. But we're there in the north there, and Leeds, Sheffield and Newcastle are the centres, and Sheffield and Newcastle are recent additions. So I think we've got 15 centres in the UK now for the University of Law, and it's expanding all the time. So this is just really to talk about a bit about our alumni network and how big the alumni network is and how wide-ranging it is across the globe. Some of you may know that the University of Law traditionally, some time ago, was the College of Law and was the kind of preeminent place for legal education and completing your legal education before, as I said, the change to this system as we have it up to September 2021, where you had to take an LPC. Before that, it was something known as the Law Finals. And I hear stories like everyone had to find out their result from the newspaper. So everyone would used to rush down to the news agents to be the first to get the newspaper that day. So times have changed a little bit, but there's still a lot of tradition in the UK, obviously, with the legal community. And something to say, obviously, is that I will be focusing on the route to becoming a solicitor. The route to become a barrister is a different route as it currently stands, and the BSB, the Bar Standards Board, are going down a slightly different path with their changes. So just a little bit more about the University of Law and their background and the type of firms that they work with. You may or may not know the legal profession in the UK is very diverse. I myself worked as what I would describe as a high street firm to start with. That's where I did my training contract. So high street firm, a small firm in Chesterfield, about 15-20 miles away from Sheffield. It did a range of different, we call it a full service law firm, did a range of different work. Then I moved to a kind of top 50 commercial law firm called Halliwell's, and I specialised in commercial and construction litigation. So just kind of tell you that the legal profession is very wide ranging. Obviously, at the top, you've got the magic and silver circle firms, which tend to be based, or certainly traditionally started being based in London and the southeast, but they've expanded out and they have centres now around other areas of the UK. And I would say our biggest legal centres after London are probably Birmingham, Manchester, and then you're looking at kind of Leeds. And Sheffield is a smaller legal community, but it still has a wide range of law firms there. So routes into practice, this is what I want to focus on today. I'm sure this is why you're here. Okay. So as I said before, the bar route remains unchanged, and it is going to continue, and they have decided, because they are a little bit more traditional in their outlook than the SRA, that they will continue with the same route as I described earlier. The only difference there is you must, as it said here, you must go on to do currently the BPC, the Bar Professional Course, keeps changing its name, which is a one-year program full-time, and then you do a pupillage. So not hugely dissimilar, but there's a lot of different skills that go into becoming a barrister. They will probably be the ones in wigs that you might have seen on the TV in the past. So basically, I know there's a variety of you attending today at various different stages of your education. If you have studied before now, or you are currently studying a qualifying law degree or law conversion course, then you will continue on the traditional route if you started that prior to September 2021. So just to get your head around things, that's the key date, September 2021. If you're in the audience and you are studying already a qualifying law degree or equivalent law conversion course, then, and if you commence that prior to September 2021, then you are eligible for the traditional LPC route. If you haven't, if you've not yet started that, and there might be a number of you on the call, you are eligible and you must take the SQE route, okay? So if you've not yet started anything, be a law degree or qualifying course, then you must now take the SQE route. But there will be some of you, I'm sure, who might be in that transitional period, as we call it, where you've got a choice. So this is kind of giving a bit more detail on that, and I'll talk through it now. As I say, if you commenced an LLB or law conversion before September 2021, then as I say, that's the traditional route of completing that, the legal practice course and a 2-year training contract. But you also have a choice at the moment to undertake the SQE route, which is the bottom line. As I say, if you have not yet started, you must take this new route. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, but as I say, for those of you in a transition, I'm happy to also cover that. So what is the new route? And this has been, for those of you who've read anything about it, it's been a somewhat controversial introduction by the SRA. So they're the regulatory body in the UK. And what they have decided is that after September 2021, anyone who's commencing their route to becoming a solicitor must now take this option. So in a nutshell, all that is required now as a basic is a graduate degree. It doesn't have to be a degree in law. There's no qualifying law degree or equivalent. If you have a graduate degree, in theory, you can register for and pay to take the solicitor's qualifying exam, part 1 and part 2, and they're split into 2 parts. Now, that would be a bit of a crazy decision. I would not suggest to any of you of taking SQE 1 or 2 unless you've had some form of training beforehand, but the idea is that the training has become more flexible. So you don't have to take a 3-year law degree or a 1-year GDL or a 2-year MA and then the LPC. Instead, there's different routes you can take. Now, my own thoughts about this going forward is if you've never studied law before, you are still extremely likely to take either a law degree or a conversion course, which the University of Law would probably be known as the postgraduate diploma in law, as we've rebadged it, and then what will be known as the LLM in legal practice, which is the equivalent, the LPC, a 1-year master's. And if you take those 2 courses together, then you will be much better prepared to take SQE 1 and 2. But there, as I'll go on to, there are other courses available. You can, if you want to, simply take an SQE 1 and 2 preparation course. Now, they are much shorter in length. They're much more focused on just getting you trying to get you ready for the SQE 1 and 2. But again, that's going to be very unstudied law at all prior to that point. If you're a non-law graduate, I think our recommendation at the University of Law would be you need to take a substantive course other than just a prep course to be able to get that knowledge in law. And here's why. So the SQE Part 1 exam is 2 180 single best answer question assessments, 10 hours over 2 days. So a large undertaking for you. The key thing is this exam is made up of 50% academic knowledge, so the stuff you would learn in a law degree or a conversion course, and 50% practical knowledge, the stuff that at the moment you would learn on the legal practice course. So the big difference between the two, traditional route is undergraduate or conversion is more academic knowledge of the law. The LPC is much more practically applied. So you're thinking about a client in practice and you're thinking about applying the law to a practical situation. So that's the difference. And the SQE1 exam is supposed to test the combination of both knowledge. Therefore, as you'll see, the two exams are a mixture of all different stuff. And this is the real challenge going forward. It's a big change here, is that on each of these exams, there will be a combination of practical stuff. So I would describe dispute resolution as an LPC type subject, a practically applied, practice-based vocational topic, as opposed to contract, which is very much academic subject, learning about the academic rules of contract law. So they're all mixed together, 50% for each type of skill, and there's 180 questions on each of the exams. And the big challenge is these are known as single best answer questions. So that means all the answers in theory could be correct for some reason, but one is better than the other. So they're not simply multiple choice, they're a bit more challenging than that. So there's a real key skill there that's brand new for lawyers going forward in the UK, that you're expected to understand how to take single best answer questions. And this is not something traditionally that you have much experience of. So that has to be built into your training, as well as appreciating what academic knowledge is, what practically applied knowledge is. So that's SQE Part 1. And the first set of students have taken that exam already in the UK. The pass rate wasn't brilliant, and I think that's for a combination of reasons. Number one, it was the first incarnation through. Number two, the exams were sat a day after one another. I think the SRA won't do that again because I think it really tired people out. But they're not going to tell us what they want the pass rate to be, and we won't know that in advance. So I can't tell you right now what the pass rate is likely to be for this new course. I can tell you from the LPC, if you do the traditional route, you get 3 attempts at every assessment on the legal practice course. And I would say anecdotally, most people on most programs, certainly when I taught at the University of Sheffield, I would say 80% plus of students passed the LPC. For this first SQE assessment, I think the statistics were more around 55%. So obviously that will change, but there is a different challenge going on here. SQE Part 2 is, again, the first incarnation has gone through, but this is the skills part. So they've separated out the skills part. And again, this is the kind of stuff you would do on the LPC. The LPC has 14 different assessments in total. They're all set by the institution internally. SQE 1 and 2 are set externally by a provider called Kaplan. You need to register externally with them, and they're sat centrally at a test centre away from your institution, which is another big change. And SQE Part 2 is the skills element. So this is, as it says on this slide, different skills. So legal writing, drafting, advocacy, the stuff you'll need, the practical skills you'll need to become a lawyer. And I anticipate SQE 2 is going to be more straightforward to take, or it's more focused. For me, the big challenge at the moment is SQE 1 for anyone starting this afresh and getting themselves ready and built for that. SQE 2, I imagine the pass rates will be higher. We don't yet know the pass rates of the first incarnation through. They're going to be released, I think, in the next couple of weeks here in the UK. But I anticipate the pass rates to be higher there. So you have to register with the SRA. You must pass both. As I've said, they're independent completely of where you study. You're only allowed 3 attempts in 6 years. If you fail them, you have to pay the full fee again. Well, that's the big thing. So as you'll see here, the fee is separate and payable to your assessment centre to pass these exams, and the resit cost is a full resit fee, no discount at all. I hope personally they change that. I think that's completely unreasonable considering the current system, the fact if you pay your LPC fee, you get 3 attempts at it through your provider. There's a small resit fee for each exam, but it doesn't amount to anywhere near that cost. So what is a single best answer question? As I mentioned briefly before. So the idea is, and I've had to draft a couple of these myself, so I have some knowledge of this. You get the STEM, which is the scenario, the client-based scenario. You set out a question, the lead-in as it's known, and then you give the answers. There's always 5 options. Definitely more than one might be technically correct. In fact, all of them might be technically correct, depending on the the difficulty level, the ranking level of the SBAQ, because they rate between 1 and 3, 3 being the most difficult. And I think what the SRA will do, well, I don't definitely know, is try to balance the difficulty level. So this is an example. You may or may not be able to answer this. The owner of a Greek restaurant orders 4 tiles that include a border design showing the Greek flag. After the tiles have been fitted, the owner notices that the tiles are decorated with the flag of Uruguay. Wants them to be replaced in a claim for breach of contract, which the following measure of damages is the court most likely to award. Now then, I'm tempted to have a look at the, just stop myself and look at the chat box. Would anyone like to try and answer this? See if anything puts, anyone there is okay. So got one for cost of cure. Any others, or maybe just wait 30 seconds? One for loss of amenity, okay. So I describe this as an academic test. I know for some of you, you may not have studied this before, so it's a bit unfair, but more for those who have started to study this stuff. This is the bit of the SQE part 1 that I would describe as your law degree stroke conversion course knowledge, not your practical knowledge. Mental stress, interesting. So it's not simple. People are coming up with different answers. I can tell you cost of cure is correct, or the most correct. So these are all damages that could be awarded in contract law. I would say the reason that cost of cure is best is because, I do teach contract law, so I can say this with some authority, is that the owner is planning to replace them. So wants to get the cost back of replacing. If they weren't, you would be looking at something else. Now it's difficult if they weren't planning they seem to be a business, so I don't think it'd be mental distress or loss of amenity, but expectation and reliance, it's interesting. There's a bit of a debate about whether those two things, whether one is wider than the other. So I think that they would have to rephrase the question if they weren't planning to replace those tiles. So yeah, there you go. This is an example of a LPC type or practically applied type of question. So we've got there's a dispute. She's the boy, apparently raises his fist to the girl. The woman stops the car, rushes over. She grabs the boy, wrestles him to the ground, suffers some cuts and bruises. The police are called, but when they speak to the teenager, it becomes apparent they're brother and sister, and they were just arguing over who it was to dog for the wall. Assuming the woman is charged with assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, can she rely on the defense of self-defense, prevention of crime? Now, this is not my expert area, but feel free to have another go at this if you wish. I mean, it might be more difficult to put this in the chat questions, but you're welcome. You are absolutely welcome to give this a go if you want. I'll maybe wait a few seconds before showing you the answer. Like I say, I don't have a background in criminal law, so I'm a little bit as much in the dark on you one as you. But as you can see from these single best answers, there's three 2 yeses and 3 no's here. So different reasons for yes and no. So yes or no isn't enough. So it was a yes, but yes because she honestly believed that the force was necessary. So not because, so the relevance and reasonableness of force, it makes it a better answer than the others. And remember, you've got about 1.7 minutes to answer each of these questions. So I know you might feel like I was rushing you, but that's just an example of the SQE Part 1 exams. Okay. So it looks like from the chat, quite a few people got both of those right, so good work. So in terms of the learning style at the University of Law, it's a combination of these things. Here we're talking about SQE courses. And what we try and do is, with tutor interactions, we go through a prepare, engage, and consolidate, or PEC method. So prepare is a series of tasks. engages the session itself, consolidate is reviewing your notes and completing some after session content afterwards. So that's how it works as it currently stands on things like the postgraduate diploma in law and the LLM in legal practice. It's that model of learning, which some might describe a kind of flipped learning model. So you're kind of using preparatory asynchronous things to get someone ready. And there's a fair bit of work you do each week or before each session to get ready for it. Okay, this is the legal practice course. So this is my bread and butter. This is the stuff that, as I say, I've been teaching on for the last 10 years here. As you'll see here, we run the LPC as a diploma, which is all that is currently required on the traditional system for those who commenced an LB or conversion prior to September 2021. That's all the SRA requires, a diploma, but you can top it up to a master's. The reason that many institutions introduce that is because there's a master's loan available. It's not available for diplomas, but you can get a master's loan through the student loans company in the UK to be able to fund your fees for the LPC course. It usually takes effectively an academic year to complete this full-time, or you can do it over 2 years part-time. And as you'll see, it involves stage 1 and stage 2, as I call it, the core modules, business law, dispute resolution, and real estate. And then you choose electives in different areas. If you do the MSc, you can top it up with an extra elective or a law and business module. So, as I say, everyone prior to September 2021 in the traditional routes will be coming to the LPC with either a law degree or a conversion course, and then has to do this course and has to pass it, has to pass the different assessments, of which there are approximately 14 different assessments, which include your skills-based exams as well as examinations on your core modules and electives. The electives themselves, they're the large variety spaced into different categories of the type of electives you can do. So this is, and I teach commercial law, for example, have done for a number of years. So there are different types of focus, and you can either have a free choice. Sometimes your law firm says, we want you to do these 3. So usually they will choose the ones on the right. A lot of the Magic Circle firms would hate you do those 3. But otherwise you have a free choice, and it's a kind of introduction. There's less time. So stage 1 is probably over about 15 weeks or so of teaching, whereas the elective period is 9 weeks of teaching. So there's less in the electives, and that's just the way it was designed by the SRA, rightly or wrongly. So less content in the electives. So I would describe them more as an introduction to these subjects. So it's not a prerequisite. You know, if you're going to go and practice, I mean, I practiced in construction litigation for a few years. There was no construction elective available when I studied the LPC, but it didn't preclude me from going into that area. So it's more just if you've got an interest, and most importantly, are you likely to pass these subjects? As on the flip side, these are the courses that the University of Law offer for the SQE courses. So as I say, technically speaking, anyone can take the SQE Part 1 and Part 2 as long as they've got a graduate degree, but we would never recommend that. So we've got a range of options, and we are strongly suggesting which courses would be appropriate for non-law and law students. So on the left, you've got here in the kind of purpley colour, you've got the courses for non-law students. As I say, you could choose to do a full conversion, an MA Law and PGDL, which work very similar to the GDL and MA Law now. Or you could, if you wanted to, do an SQE LE online, which is a much shorter prep course, if you so wish. But I think most people choose the MA in Law, PGDL. They may choose the bottom option, which is, as you see, is one mega course, which incorporates both the conversion course and the basically LPC equivalent, which is getting you prepped for the practical knowledge part of SQE1 and the skills in SQE2. If you're a law graduate or you've already got a conversion, if you've come with that background already, if you've done a law degree, then we would suggest you do the Llm Legal Practice, which is very similar to the current LPC, or a prep course for SQE1, which is much shorter in length. Then for SQE2, obviously, if you've done the Llm Legal Practice, that prepares you for both because you do the skills element too, but alternatively, you can split it up into 2 prep courses. And it's very difficult to know which is better. I'll give you my own opinion in a moment in terms of where you've got that choice. As I say, you may not have a choice, but if you've got that choice, which is better, the LPC or the SQE? But these are the courses that we're currently offering on this. So the LLM in legal practice, as I say, very similar to the current LPC. There will be some obviously single best answer question preparatory work to do. That will largely be asynchronous, as I call it, online outside of the sessions. The taught sessions will focus more on the practical application stuff, trying to get you ready for practice, as well as getting you to understand the practical knowledge stuff for SQE1 and skills in SQE2. The academic knowledge stuff in the LLM and legal practice will mainly be asynchronous type exercises, because what we will say there is you're likely to have studied this before, so it would be revision rather than doing it for the first time. So what makes it an LLM rather than simply a prep course is that you do, similar to the LPC, you do some core areas and some electives. And then at the end, you will do some business professional practice report start type things that makes it a master's in LLM. And the reason, again, that we do that, as I say, is because primarily there is funding for master's qualifications. There isn't funding for prep courses, there isn't funding for diplomas, unless you're taking a private loan or you've got sponsorship through a law firm or a scholarship. If you want a loan from the student loans company in the UK, you have to be registered on an LLM, and that's why we're offering it. And I fully anticipate this will be the most popular course for those with law experience prior to coming onto this course. So the other thing that's changed is there will no longer be, a training contract, 2 years training contract. It's known as qualifying work experience. Now, it's still got to be 2 years in total, but the idea here, as it says in this slide, is that it can take place at different employers. In theory, it can involve working in a clinic, a law firm, at a university. A lot of universities in the UK now have law firm clinics, almost mock law firms, where they do work for the community. Could involve working at Citizens Advice Bureau or different places, but it needs to be signed off by the employer. It needs to be accredited, and that's the challenge. Some work that you've done may not be considered accredited, and that's going to be the challenge here. Lots of law firms will keep this and say, we'd rather you do 2 years with us, much like you would do a traditional training contract, and then we'll sign it off at the end. But in theory, the SRA have opened this up to say you can do it at different places, which at the moment you cannot do. You have to do a training contract for 2 years, in the vast majority of cases, at one provider. And that's the problem, is that everyone is competing to get those training contract positions, which are very, very competitive at the biggest firms. So yeah, this is an example of what you could do. So you could work, as I say, do some pro bono work. You could add to that. You could then do your SQE1 exam. You could work at, what it's trying to say here is you could work at 4 different employers, building up your qualifying work experience, taking your 2 exams along the way, perhaps doing some prep courses or doing an LLM in legal practice or part-time, but you're building it up. And remember, what the SRA are saying under the new route is that when you've done SQE part 1 and part 2 in those 2 years of qualifying work experience, you are qualified. On the current route, what you need to have done is a law degree or equivalent, an LPC, a 2-year training contract, and then you're qualified. Another kind of less exciting, more traditional example would be you effectively do the LLM in legal practice after a conversion course. So you study for basically 2 years after your graduate degree. You then take a 2-year placement at one firm. I think, let me just go back a stage, that will be the more common route still. That is kind of a mirror image of the only route as it currently stands. The other one's more exciting, as you could see, but the challenge there is actually signing off that work. So the University of Law, obviously there's a lot of support that's needed. It's always been needed, as well as tutors supporting you like me. There's a number of different opportunities to get involved in. And this slide kind of sets out some of those, which I think is really useful. It's about navigating this. Now, the LPC, big advantages for me are it's been around a long time, as I say. You can add some choice to your degree. And lots of law firms haven't yet caught up, and they're still saying, right, we know what the LPC is. We're still going to offer training contracts. We're happy if you've got the LPC and you're in the current route. We recognize it, so we like you. Anyone's coming through new, we don't know you yet. Is it going to be as good a training? That's the million-dollar question. My advice for anybody who is thinking about doing, who's in the stage where they've got a choice between the two routes, if they're thinking about studying a postgraduate level this autumn, so we're talking in the next couple of months, or early next year, because the University of Law offer a January intake for the LPC, is to do the LPC. The reason I say that is because of what this slide says, because it's what firms know. You don't have to battle with SQE on part one whilst it's in its early formative stage, whilst the pass rate is lower and there's a big unknown there. It's tried and tested, and I really do think that the vast majority of law firms in the UK will recognise it and won't make you do anything different. And they'll be happy for you to do a 2-year training contract with them and then sign you off as a qualified solicitor. Okay, so that would be my advice right now. However, this is going to change, and this is really going to be dictated by the legal market, in my opinion. The advantages of the SQE are, certainly the SRA would say, you can get qualifying work experience from different providers. It may be cheaper. They wanted to make it much cheaper. I think if you do the courses and then pass SQE first time, it will come out slightly cheaper than doing an LPC. But the big but is, if you don't pass these exams first time, that's when it definitely becomes more expensive to do SQE because you have to pay the full fee again. And again, the bottom one, when will law firms change their mind? Now, I was speaking to someone the other day who's got a training contract at Slaughter and May, which is a Magic Circle firm in London. They're saying for all their future trainees starting in, I believe, September 2023, they're going to require all of them to become through on this new system. So even if those students have undertaken an LPC, they're going to ask them to do SQE2 on top of that. If you've done the LPC, you are exempted from SQE Part 1, but you're not exempted from SQE Part 2. So it's really down to what the law firm says. There was a poll the other day, and lots of law firms in the UK said, we're not going to require people who've done an LPC to do any more because we feel they're ready. But more and more law firms will start to say, no, we want everyone to come through on the new system because it's easier for us to manage. So we want everyone either to do the SQE route, or if they haven't done it, to effectively top it up with SQE Part 2, which is what they need to do. And as soon as more and more law firms say that, it will be pretty much pointless to do the old system. Unless you really, really don't fancy doing SQE Part 1, you want to do the LPC, and providers are still running it because enough people will still do it. And remember, that will change because eventually there won't be enough people wanting to do it for providers to run the courses. But to me, that could be, unless you're getting funded by a law firm, that could be quite expensive because you've got to pay for an SQE2 exam on top of the LPC. And so it's a bit of expense there. So this is very, like, I would say in the next year or so, we're going to really start to see a transition. And certainly in the next 2 years, it's going to switch quite substantially with most people going through the SQE route. So we're really at a very transitional period here. So this slide pretty much sums up what I've just said. And it's down to you and down to you keeping an eye, speaking to as many people as you can as to what law firms are doing in the UK. It's just a couple of anecdotal. Slaughter and May said one thing. Like I said, a lot of firms, particularly small and medium firms, are still saying here in the UK, no, we're happy to accept people under the traditional route at the moment. I think I've covered this. Obviously, there is private student funding. There are student loan company funds for the LLM, but not for the prep courses. There are scholarships available, as it says here, through University of Law or elsewhere. There are on our website. I would encourage you to check those out. They're relatively competitive, but there might be an option for you. Okay, so I think I've come within my time. I think I've, Sanjay, you'll tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I've talked for about 40 minutes there. So I'm at the end of my slides. So I'm very happy to go over to questions now, if that's the best thing to do.
Sure. So this is perfect. We are sharp on time, and I do see some questions that have come in. So Aishwarya has asked a question. Bharat has asked a question. I'm going to take both of their questions, but before I do that, I am going to run one quick poll. In the meanwhile, I want to encourage the audience to keep asking the questions in the Q&A window. If you have posted your question in the chat window, please copy paste in the Q&A window. It's easier for us to moderate that Q&A. You can also upvote the questions asked by others. So if you find a question which is relevant, please click on the plus here, like the thumbs up button, so that I know which are the important questions to ask to Gareth. Now with that, let me launch the first poll for the evening, which is going live on your screen right now. The question is, which route are you most interested in? Which route to becoming a solicitor in the UK do you find most relevant? And I'm assuming you have got the understanding of both the routes by now, or if there's any confusion, you can say you're really unsure at the moment. Otherwise, choose LPC or SKU, or if you're flexible, then the third option. So please respond to this poll. It would be really good to see what your understanding or takeaway from this session is. Those of you who have responded to the poll, you can ask your questions in the chat window. It would really, in the Q&A window, it would really help me moderate the Q&A better. So Pranav, to you as well, if you can ask your question in the Q&A window, I would surely pick it up and ask Gareth. Okay, I'm going to keep the poll open for another few seconds. So if you haven't yet responded, then please do. Please let us know the route that you're most interested in, which is the route that you find most convenient or relevant for your pathway to becoming a solicitor in the United Kingdom. I'm going to show the results in a minute. If you haven't responded yet, then please do. I would love to include your response as well. Okay, I still see some responses coming in. We are close to around 30 responses, which is good to see. I'm going to wait for another 5 seconds. So if you haven't responded, please do so now. And in the meanwhile, you can also keep posting your questions in the Q&A window, upvoting the questions asked by others, so that I can pick up those questions to ask to Gareth. All right, with that, I'm going to end the poll and share the results very quickly. So yeah, you can see the results on your screen right now. So around 23% of the audience said LPC as their most interested route. 33% are looking to go towards the newest QE path. 20% are flexible, and 23% are still confused and not sure which pathway is the best for them. Gareth, do you have any advice for the people who are confused as of now, or should they get in touch with you eventually and seek more guidance over there?
Absolutely. Thank you for running that, Sanjay. I mean, I was expecting that kind of spread, to be honest. So it's nice to see that. Well, it's not nice to see, but it certainly it reflects what a lot of people are saying in the UK at the moment. So you guys are not alone there. Absolutely reach out to us at the University of Law. You're welcome to email me directly or speak to anyone of us over here if you're still unsure. But it's difficult. It does come down to a personal decision where you've got that option. Obviously, as I say, for some of you, and I've noticed, I've just got the Q&A open at the moment. So I've got some points to say there. I noticed some of you have said, about transitioning over, which does have a different answer to it. But yeah, for some of you where you've got that choice, just keep talking to us. I think the market's going to dictate this change, really. So ultimately, it's going to come down to, as I say, my own personal advice. There's advice shared by a number of other people that if you're looking to start now and you can do it under the traditional route, then I would encourage you to do that. But that's likely to change in the next year. So if you're not making a decision yet, and yet you still will have the choice in a year's time, I would look again to what the legal market is doing. And I'm certain the SRA and institutions, we've got something called Legal Geek in this country, and they're the ones that undertook this poll recently. I think they polled about 1,000 law firms. So they'll continue to do that because they'll want to know and they'll want to tell you guys what law firms are thinking.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that advice, Gareth. Now the questions have started coming in, and in fact, we have quite a few of those. Let me pick up the first one, which has been the most upvoted question so far. This is by Janvi Wade, who's asking, So who's going to pursue her LLM in the UK this year and plans to give the SQE in next fall, so that's June 2023. How do they do the course as well? Or are they eligible to do the course?
Okay, yeah, so they're going to do this, the LLM, I presume by that they mean the LLM in legal practice rather than the Llm Ltc as it currently stands, and that, because given that they make a reference there to the SQE next autumn, and you're right to say that there's this kind of multiple sitting points for the SQE. If they've already done a conversion, I mean, of course, they could go straight onto the LLM in legal practice, having not done a PGDL or any conversion course prior to that point if they want. I believe ULaw will accept them on, but it's not recommended. I wouldn't recommend you go straight onto the LLM in legal practice, which is the LPC equivalent, unless you've done something before that. My biggest recommendation would be a PGDL, but the next recommendation would be some sort of pre-prep course, just because you're not on the LLM in legal practice, you're not going to be spending any time on the academic knowledge in class. So if you've never studied that before, my strong advice would be you need to do a course where you're learning about academic knowledge in class before you start an LLM in legal practice, or else you're really going to struggle to pass SQE Part 1. So I don't know if that answers the question enough, but unless, my strong recommendation is you don't start the LLM in legal practice, which is your, as I said before, your LPC equivalent, unless you've done some sort of academic based prep prior to that. And that could be a law degree, it could be a PGDL or equivalent.
All right. So I hope, Janvi, that gives you some clarity. Gareth, the next question I want to take is from Aishwarya More. I do have her profile with me. She's a student at the Government Law College in Mumbai. It's among the top law colleges in India, based in Mumbai. She's appearing for the Indian Solicitor's exam in November 2022, so November this year, and she's already completed her 3-year work contract. Now, under the Change UK Sol's rule, is she required to redo the 2-year contract in the UK with a UK law firm, or her 3-year contract in India will suffice for that?
Yeah, good question. That's a very good question. So you may or may not know that the old system was for converting, cross-conversion of legal qualifications from another jurisdiction was taking something known as the QLTS, the Qualified Legal Training System. That's now gone. So what they're saying now is under QLTS is that you have to pass the SQE Part 1 and Part 2. What you used to have to do isn't the QLTS exam, but what they're saying is those QLTS exams won't exist going forward. You take SQE Part 1 and Part 2 instead. Now, you will know better than me how prepared you might be, and I think what we would anticipate is you might do a short SQE 1 and 2 prep course rather than doing a full 2 years of additional study given your previous experience, but that would be dependent on what you've learned through your education and experience in your jurisdiction. In terms of the QWE requirement, as far as I understand it, you could use that. Now that's a good question. I believe QWE would include the ability to undertake work in another jurisdiction, but I'm doubting myself a little bit on that. That might be something you might have to follow up with me on, because QWE has to be signed off by legal employers. It can be at 4 different institutions, but I'm just wondering if it has to be done in this jurisdiction. It would seem a little bit over onerous for me, for those who've got substantial legal experience in another jurisdiction, and that the SRA would sign that off, providing that you've passed SQE 1 and Part 2. That would be my strong inkling. But sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer on that one. That's quite a technical question. So you might have to follow that up with me. I was reading the QLTS SRA stuff the other day. It's not the clearest on their website. My strong hope and inclination would be you wouldn't be required to do a full 2 years worth of QWE in this jurisdiction.
All right. So Gareth, if So if Aishwarya or someone has more follow-on questions or related to this, can they write to someone at University of Law, any of the email addresses that they can reach out to?
Yes, they absolutely can. Yes.
Okay. So Aishwarya, my recommendation to the others, right? If by chance your question is not completely answered over here, do reach out to the team. You can find the email address on the website. We can also send it to you post a session or WhatsApp. So use that to reach out and get your doubts cleared. I can imagine with the transition, things can be a little confusing and complicated, and there may be some gray areas. So it's always great to get a response in detail as a follow-up. So please do reach out to the University of Law as well. Gareth, Aishwarya did have I know I'm taking a few questions continuously from Aishwarya. That's because she also is in tandem. I will come to more questions. We still have 10 more minutes in this session, so I'm going to try to cover as many questions as possible. But Gareth, her follow-on or supplementary question is, a qualified solicitor in India will be required to appear for SQE2 plus the work contract, or any exemptions are granted? I think it's the same continuation of the question.
Yes.
Do you have a response for that now, or is it better she writes in?
I think certainly in relation to the first point, yes. My understanding is you would be required to take SQE and pass SQE 1 and 2, much like you would have had to do the QLTS prior to this point. As I say, in relation to the work contract and the requirement for QWE, my inclination is your experience can count in another jurisdiction. But as I say, I don't want to definitively say yes on that because I'm not 100% sure. The SRA are doing some strange stuff, and like I say, I was trying to read this the other day. I had a lady asking me, because she had qualified in Ukraine and obviously had to leave Ukraine and come over here. She was asking me the same thing, and my hope is that that would reduce or eliminate the requirement for QWE, and you could sign yourself off. And obviously, we're talking about technicalities here. You then, after that point, have to get a job in a UK law firm. They may, for the big challenge here is still that some law firms may not employ you as a solicitor, even if the SRA will sign you off and don't make you do QWE because you have previous experience. If you then get a job at a UK law firm, they might say, well, we would like you to have some experience in our law firm before we'll pay you as and employ you as a solicitor. So they might call you a paralegal or something similar. That's the one thing I would say there, which I think is hopefully useful advice. I hope they don't do that, but some might.
Awesome, great. Thanks for that, Gareth. Let me take the next question from Gayaka, who is a law student in Pune. And her question is around is whether the QWE 2-year contract is required before SQE1 and SQE2, or between or after passing assessment of SQE1 and SQE2?
That's a very good question. Yeah, it's flexible. So in theory, as you might have seen from that jazzy slide that I put up before, you could, if you want to, build up your QWE, your 2 years, at 4 different employers, up to 4 different employers at any point. I think the most common thing will be you take SQE1, and then it would be very difficult to take SQE2 without a little bit of QWE. So I think the anticipation is you'll probably take SQE2 after you've done some QWE, but it's not mandatory. You could simply take, academic courses, not have built up any QWE, undertake SQE1 and SQE2 shortly thereafter, and then do 2 years worth of QWE after that. But it's supposed to be flexible, so there's no mandatory requirement. As long as you've built up 2 years and it's been signed off, and that's the key thing, it's got to be agreed to be signed off by a legal employer and then accepted by the SRA. And you might get the odd case where you go to the SRA ombudsman where they're having a dispute with a law firm over that, which hopefully doesn't happen. I know the SRA have said we will support people on that if the law firms are refusing to sign off work, but it's supposed to be flexible.
All right. Gareth, the next most quoted question is by Aman. He's done his law in India and he's planning to do an LLM course. Doing an LLM course. So can he give the SQE exam before the LLM, or will he have to give the SQE after doing LLM and also before giving the SQE1 and SQE2? Or do we have to do 6 months internship before, in between, and after SQE1? So little confusing question. I am not a law background person, so confusing for me as well. But Gareth, Aman's question is the most upvoted question right now. You'd be able to see that in the Q&A window.
Yes, I'm just trying to interpret this question. LLM, it does depend what type of LLM you're talking about here. I presume it means the LLM in legal practice. Remember, there's no mandatory requirements in terms of the SQE route. All you need is a graduate degree in any subject. And then in theory, you can take SQE 1 and Part 2. It is certainly not my recommendation. If you've got a law background, my recommendation would be to do the LLM in legal practice or potentially an SQE 1 and 2 prep course before you attempt the exams, because you're much more likely to pass, but there's no mandatory requirement there. If you've not got a law background, my strong recommendation would be to do some sort of law training, PGDL or short courses, then do an LLM conversion, or do the the one option was that MA that we offer for non-law backgrounds that covers both these things.
So Gareth, Aman is a LLB graduate from India. He's just posted that in the video as well. He's already done his bachelor's in law in India. Okay, great.
Well, my recommendation then would be to either do the LLM in legal practice or an SQE 1 and 2 prep course, although my personal recommendation would be to the LLM in legal practice, because I think that's going to be the most popular choice and gives you the best start, and then take SQE 1. You then may do a bit of QWE before taking SQE 2, albeit I would say the LLM in legal practice will prepare you for SQE 2 as well.
Great. Aman, I hope that answers your question. Gareth, I'm going to take a slightly low upvoted question, but it may be relevant for a lot of audience. This is by Sohail, who is asking the difference between LLM legal practice and the LLM LPC.
Okay, yeah. So the big difference there is one is under the new system, the LLM legal practice, one is under the traditional route. I think those courses will look relatively similar to anyone looking at them, in that under either of those courses, you're focusing on practical knowledge, applied knowledge, and you're doing subjects that I would describe as the practical applied part of SQE Part 1 and the skills in SQE 2. The only big difference is obviously in the LLM legal practice, you will be expected to keep up with some asynchronous work, which is effectively single best answer question prep. You'll be doing that probably outside of the workshop. You'll be expected to do that alongside your studies. There are some other changes in that the type of subjects you do might be slightly different in scope. Under the LLM in legal practice, you're required to do a research element at the end, which is a little bit more onerous than the current LPC. My personal opinion is the LLM in legal practice is slightly more onerous than the current LPC. It's slightly longer. There's a little bit more work to study, but there's not huge differences between the two.
Great. Thanks for that, Gareth. We are on time. Are you okay extending for another 5 minutes?
Yes, that's fine.
Awesome. Great. So I can take a few more questions, and let me ask some questions around career opportunities, right? So I was seeing some questions around the kind of opportunities that Indian students who study law in the UK can expect, and are the opportunities the same for an Indian national and an other, or a UK resident or a British national studying law over there?
Okay, yes. So obviously, if you're going to choose to study undergraduate or postgraduate in the UK and you're an Indian national, there is Tier 4 visa requirements there. So obviously my answers are subject to that, and engaging in higher education in the UK allows you to be eligible for those for that visa, subject to your engagement in those courses and then continued engagement. I think there's a number in terms of practical experience you can get whilst you're studying in the UK. It's the same as it would be for any English national, in that there are opportunities there for you to get work outside. Now, the only thing I say about that is that whilst you're studying, you will have that visa. So I think this is what this question is driving at. Once you've finished your study, if you are an Indian national, your choice may be restricted by the requirements of the visa. So what you and I've seen this before, I've taught obviously a number of international students over the years, you would be required to find an employer that's willing to pay for your visa to work in the UK post-education. So whilst you're in education, you have that visa as part of your study. After that, you would have to find an employer that's willing to do that. And that's not every employer. So if I'm honest, I would say your choice of law firm to go into or other provider may be slightly more focused or restrictive, if you want to call it that way. So some of the smallest firms may think it's too expensive for me to do that for one graduate. We've never done this before, so we don't know what we're doing, but certainly the medium firms, clearly all the Magic Circle and Silver Circle will have had a number of international students study before and will fund that visa. But that's the best answer I can give on that.
All right, great. Thanks for that, Akhila. I hope that answers your question, gives you some indication as to what the opportunities you can look for if you're an international student pursuing law in the UK. Okay, let me take this. Let me take Sridhar's question first, because currently that's the most important question. Is there any requirement to take the GRE, TOEFL, or IELTS, or are these waivers available for Indian candidates? Because a lot of them would have pursued their undergrad education. The medium of instruction for their undergrad education would be in English. So can they expect a TOEFL or an IELTS waiver? And is the GRE score required to apply?
I'm just having a look for, so I'm just monitoring the question.
It's currently the topmost question by Sridhar.
Oh, okay. So is this is there any need of, for some reason I'm trying to look at this. It's not, I can't see the text kind of goes a bit strange and in my view, that's why I can't. Okay. So is this the one about English speaking courses?
Yep.
Okay. I can't see the full, sorry, I was just listening to you there, but I can't see the full text. So was it, yes, I mean, obviously, where you're learning and you are working and you're expected to speak English, which would be a requirement in the UK, I would always encourage where you're written and spoken English, you feel it's not maybe the best, that absolutely you should think about perhaps taking a supplementary course when you're over here. There are support services that are run through these programs by the University of Law for study skills, for things to top up your knowledge, but even those expect a certain level of written and spoken English. For some of you are aware, I know anecdotally there's an IELTS score. I don't know if for international students we require a minimum IELTS or equivalent in terms of your written and spoken English. But obviously law is a technical subject with technical terms, and law firms at the end of the day will require your written and spoken English to be a relatively good standard. As I say, that's an individual choice. You may decide, I'm going to take a supplementary course over here outside of University of Law. That there are, as I say, some skill services which I know a number of our international students take advantage of during their programs to kind of continue to progress. And I think that might well be an option, but that's really a personal choice.
So Gareth, the question is more from an admission requirement viewpoint.
Oh, okay.
They would have, almost all of them would have pursued their undergrad education where the medium of instruction would have been in English. So they would be fluent in spoken and written English. But as an admission requirement at the University of Law, do they need to submit a TOEFL or an IELTS score for that?
That is a very good question. I don't directly deal with admissions. So again, I don't want to give a definitive answer. Obviously, we do have a number of international students here. There may be a requirement in terms of, as I say, an IELTS score or equivalent, but I think that would be a question for the admissions team at ULaw rather than me, I'm afraid.
Sure. So Sridhar, what I would recommend is do check out the website. Usually the eligibility criteria would be on the University of Law website. So check that out. A lot of universities across the globe give you a TOEFL, IELTS waiver if your transcripts, right, of your previous education mention that your medium of instruction is in English. So what you can do is possibly reach out to the University of Law. The email address was posted by Catherine in the chat window. I'm going to paste it again. It's international@law.ac.uk. I'm going to post that in the chat window once more. what you can do is send your transcripts where it's mentioned that your medium of instruction was in English, and then request for a waiver. Most universities outside of India now do grant you that IELTS and TOEFL waiver. Similarly, for the GRE score requirement, do check out the website. The website would usually be very clear about the same. Great. And Catherine, so if you look at the chat window now, Catherine, who is the remission representative from University of Law, she has posted the entry requirements link in the chat window. Do check it out, and you would get clarity about the eligibility. So Ikra, the next question which I had highlighted for asking was about how to apply for the LLB course. Ikra, in the interest of time, I would recommend or request you to check out that link as well for the entry requirements. That should make it clear for you as well. In case you do have follow-on questions, do reach out to the University of Law at the email address which I have posted in the chat window now, and I'm sure they would be happy to help you out. Gareth, I'm going to take the last two questions. We are now running significantly over time, but let me take the last two questions and possibly get some insights over there. To the audience, if you see an important question in the Q&A window now, just click on that thumbs up button so that I know that question is important to you, and then I can ask that question to Gareth. But the first question, let me take it, is from, again, this is from Janvi. This is now the most upvoted question. Would they get training contract or internships while giving the SQE or studying LLM simultaneously? She had also posted a supplementary question, if I can call it that, in the chat window, which was about, could they do the SQE prep and the LLM course together?
Okay. I wouldn't suggest doing the SQE prep course and LLM together. If you're doing the LLM in legal practice, you will have SQE prep built into that, including the opportunity to do a kind of SQE mock test. So it's all built into that LLM. So it's not necessary to do those two courses together. In terms of getting a training contract, or what would be called qualifying work experience now, absolutely, you can try and build up that experience whilst you're studying. Particularly if you're studying part-time, you might get a job as a paralegal or working in a law firm. In terms of applying for jobs afterwards, lots of firms, as I say, will still want you to do 2 years with them. That would be their ideal. They might accept you as a candidate, and they probably will start to do this once they understand, because they are a little bit behind the times. I know a lot of what I'm saying to you is my take on it. As I say, the law firms haven't really started to fully embrace this new system yet, but I anticipate what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, we'll accept people who've built up some QWE if we're happy with it. But for most of our applicants, we want them to apply for what would be the equivalent of 2-year training contract or 2-year QWE with us. And you can, try and secure that much like people do now. I mean, some people manage to secure that whilst they're doing their undergraduate degree, but if it's anything like me, I didn't secure my training contract till the end of my LPC. Lots of people commence an LPC or the LLM postgraduate level without having anything in place, and we have the careers advice, and absolutely there are kind of deadlines for different firms depending on how big they are, 1, 2, sometimes 3 years in advance of you starting. But the smaller immediate firms, there's a much more flexible option to start, and that won't change.
All right. Okay. I think I've covered most of the questions. I did ask a few of the people who had asked the questions to write to the university for those questions. Let me take the last question. This is by Bharat Singh. He's a practicing advocate in India. How does one transition to practicing in the UK? If you can elaborate on some courses, certificate exams that one needs to undertake. So anything that an Indian advocate can do to transitioning to practicing law in the UK.
Yes, I think that's the same as I said before. I think, as I say, the QLTS system has gone now. So you would be expected to take and pass SQE Part 1 and Part 2. As I say, I need to clarify. I can't definitely answer on how much experience will be considered as QWE way across qualifying, but you may feel ready to take it and pass SQE 1 and 2 if you do choose that option, or you may think, oh, I need a couple of prep courses because of the change. Much like when you were taking the QLTS, a lot of people did a QLTS preparation course to actually pass that exam.
Awesome. So great. I hope, Bharat, that answers your question, and I was looking at the attendee data. A lot of the people in this session today are people who have pursued law at the undergraduate level in India. So I hope this session gave you some direction on how you can transition from being a lawyer in India to practicing law in the UK, and hope you enjoyed this session. With that, Gareth, with your permission, I would want to wrap up this session. I know we are over time and you have a busy schedule ahead. So thank you for doing this session. Thank you for taking out the time. I am personally confident that the audience find the insights useful and benefited from this. Those of you who are looking to pursue a career in law internationally and possibly in the UK, do reach out to the University of Law. The contact email address is in the chat window. The website link is in the chat window as well. And if you have any follow-on questions or anything that we at Steed can help you with, please do feel free to reach out to us as well. With that, thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Catherine, for doing this session. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for inviting us. It's been great.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. Both of you have a great day, and have a good night to those who are in India. Take care. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.